Good morning, everyone. I'm Rob McIntosh. I'm the Managing Director for Network Rail Eastern, and I have the great privilege of looking after more of the country's electrified railway than any other part of the industry. Firstly, sorry I can't be with you today. I really wanted to be part of this conference, but I thought the least I could do is spend time recording something to offer you my thoughts on what's a hugely important subject facing our country. But let me just start by just telling a little bit about history. So I'm filming this today stood in our offices at Stratford, overlooking Stratford Station, which many of you will know was one of the first great electrification schemes, overhead line schemes in the 1950s, and still runs today a very effective, very efficient, and actually the most reliable railway in the country. Not many people know that Greater Anglia is by far and away the best performing train operating company, and that's because it's running on an electrified railway. I also have the great privilege of looking after the East Coast Main Line and its electrified network. And if I was filming this in my office in York, I'd be turning now to show you a copy of the closeout report of the electrification of the East Coast Main Line, which I keep on the side of my desk as a reminder of what brilliant engineering and brilliant project delivery can really be. So, as well as looking after much of the country's already electrified network, I have the great privilege of looking after some fantastic programs where we're going to be electrifying more of our network. This includes the electrification of the Midland Main Line north all the way up to Sheffield, alongside electrification of the Transpennine route between Colton Junction and Manchester. And what great progress we're making on both those schemes, with just recently putting up structures in Stalybridge Station and seeing the structures and wires starting to go up on the overhead line section on the Midland Main Line, taking us up to Wigston, just south of Leicester. These are great achievements for us to be doing, but we have to do more. And so much of this conference today should be talking about where we need to go with our future electrification schemes. But let's give this a little bit more context, and let's give two really important dynamics at play here. First is that by 2050, the government's committed to a net zero carbon economy in a country in which we live. That's hugely important. My children are 8 and 11 years old. I think I owe it to them to leave them a country that's sustainable and safe for them to live in. It's such an important thing for our nation, our country, and indeed the world. The other dynamic at play is, of course, we're in pretty unprecedented economic times. Money is incredibly hard to come by, public money in particular. There is huge pressure on the public purse, whether it be macro inflation, whether it be simply Brexit issues. There is a lot of pressure on the public purse. So we have these two almost imposing dynamics of a hugely important moral and ethical goal to get to net zero by 2050, and the public purse being under the sort of pressure it's not felt since the end of the Second World War. The answer between the two of those has got to be brilliant engineering, allowing us to drive down the cost of electrifying the country's rail network. So a lot of what you need to talk about today, to explore, to share, to be curious, to challenge, is how do we continue to bring down the cost of electrification so that we can respond to those opposing dynamics of the need to electrify our rail network and play our role in decarbonising the country for 2050, and also being cognizant of the reality of the constraints on the public purse. Let's talk a little bit about our immediate past. I can remember being sat in a site office in 2008 as we were concluding the upgrade of the West Coast Main Line. I was talking with Network Rail colleagues at that time who were really excited about their developing plans for a national electrification programme that had great plans to electrify the whole network and do it cheaply and efficiently. However, we lost our way somewhat during that journey, as many of you will know. And the low point was probably having to row back on schemes like the Great Western Electrification and start to curtail scope of electrification in order to stay within the funds that were available. And the unit rates at that point for electrification were at a level we must never allow ourselves to go back to. Thankfully, as we move on now through the Transpennine upgrade, or we move on through Midland Main Line, we've shown that we've got the discipline, the wherewithal, the ideas and the appetite to start to drive down the unit rates of electrification. So where we are now as an industry is that we do have the traction decarbonisation strategy. We do have some programs in flight delivering electrification, but we have a huge challenge ahead of us in order to do this in an affordable way. Whilst it's really good that we've got the investment secure to go as far as we have done up the Midland Main Line to carry on across the Pennines, that's never going to be enough to make our contribution to the net carbon target in 2050. So what we have to do is go further. We have to keep driving down the unit rate cost of electrification. Much of that will be the ideas, the ingenuity, the bravery, the curiosity, and how do we bring down the cost. A lot of that is in the heads of you all at this conference today. To use the time today to exchange ideas, to challenge thinking, to be hugely curious about how do we drive down the cost of electrification so that we can continue on this great journey. We can never go back to where we were at the end of the Great Western Electrification, and have some really ambitious targets to make sure that our industry plays its fundamental role in decarbonising the UK by 2050. Thank you. Have a great day today and come out of the day with some brilliant ideas I'd love to hear about.